Are you perplexed with fruit tree pollination? Josh here. I've been growing fruit trees in the ground for 10 years and I've got hundreds planted. And one of the things that I learned early on is that fruit tree pollination can be a little confusing. So I'm going to help you clarify it here today. We're going to talk about all the different terms and some core concepts that are going to help you get you on your way to your home orchard. All right, you ready? Biggest problem with pollination is if you don't plan ahead and do your research, you might wait 5 years to find out that you didn't plant another tree when you needed to get fruit on this tree. So it's a real shame. So I always recommend doing your research to decide, all right, does this tree need and have compatible pollinators? And did I plant that? And did I plant enough of them? Sometimes you might need up to 3 trees to properly pollinate all of those trees. And in fact, I've got that right behind me. I've got this pecan tree here. I've got another one over here, and one you can't see off camera down there. And it's a type 1 and a type 2 and a late season type 2. And that's because I needed all 3 of those in order to form the fruit or the nuts on those trees. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting 10 years and you may not get anything off of them. I mean, that's nuts. All right, so you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you do your research ahead of time and plan out to make sure that each cross-pollinates the other, because some of them have sterile pollen, meaning that they can't pollinate other trees, and some of them can only be pollinated by certain types. Now, I don't want to confuse you. That's why I'm saying do your research ahead of time. The bottom line is you need to do that research before you start putting trees in the ground. Otherwise, you're just going to be just waiting for nothing. All right, let's move on. So the next concept is if you do get a self-fertile variety tree. Now, this is very common, and that means that the tree can form fruit without another variety. But here is the secret. The secret to self-pollinating trees is you still want to have another pollinating variety with it because you're going to get more fruit, you're going to get bigger fruit, you're going to get better tasting fruit. And so it's not just about forming fruit on the tree, it's about the quality of the pollination, which dictates the quality of the fruit. So even if it says self-pollinated, I would still recommend at least getting another tree of the same type. And more often than not, I recommend planting in 3s. And the reason for that is one of them might die. And then what are you going to do? So that would be terrible if you had one tree that got disease, died off, you have another tree, and that one's no longer going to get fruit because this one just died right here that was supposed to pollinate that one. So 3 is sort of the magical number. I try to plant all of my fruit trees with at least 3, sometimes more if possible, just to guarantee that you're going to get fruit down the road. All right, so that's self-fertile. All right, a couple other concepts that we're going to get into today, and that's male and female. So a really good example of that are muscadine vines. So muscadine vines, there's self-fertile varieties, and then there's female varieties, and then there's male varieties. All right, so wild muscadines, which I have a bunch of here in the woods, are mostly male and female, which means only half of the vines are going to produce fruit at all. If it's male, it won't produce fruit. If it's female, it needs a male with it to produce fruit. So this also happens in kiwis. You'll see that a lot where you have to buy a male plant and then you can have a female plant. And what happens is you have one male plant and multiple female plants that are pollinated by that. You also have self-fertile varieties, which can also pollinate female types. So that's usually named varieties of muscadines, and those will pollinate both themselves, self-fertile, and pollinate the female varieties. So that's just one example of many different types of pollination scenarios. Apples are probably the most complicated pollination that you can get into. There's early, mid, late season varieties, and all of those have to do with when do the flowers open up and can that pollen pollinate that variety. You've also got some sterile varieties. So do your research, check it out. I want everybody here to be able to get fruit off of their tree, not just get the tree in the ground and have flowers on it, but you need those flowers pollinated so that down the road, you're not just waiting and wishing and hoping. You're going to know you're going to get fruit off of that tree. All right, I hope this was helpful for you. My goal is to help each of you with your home orchard and get you going on your way. I'll see you in the next video on the challenge.